we have Facebook and Twitter. Alright, and you can see the second argument is the on-click listener. Now, in Android, whenever an event happens, if you want to listen for that event, you would create a listener. And what this does is it listens for when any item in the list view is tapped on. On click right here. When anything in this dialog is clicked, this method is fired. And what we have here is an if statement. What this does is, because we have a string array here, this parameter which determines the index of which item is chosen. What we do is, if this index equals Facebook, then we run the share to Facebook with the appropriate title and message. If else it is Twitter, then we share to Twitter. You can see on this final step here, what we do is we call builder.create, and that creates the alert dialog for us. And then we return that dialog as part of the method. And then you can see we have the share to Facebook and share to Twitter, but we'll go over that in another course. Alright, that's the share dialog class. Let's move on to this class we have, or this. You can see that this is what a menu would look like, a menu file. You can see that it's in XML, and in Android, most of the layouts and the menus and the preferences are in XML, because XML is a simple kind of language. And with this Eclipse IDE, you don't even have to know XML in order to do this. You can see we have tabs here, and I've selected the XML layout, but if I select the layout tab, you can see that we really don't need to know XML, because any values we could always put will just be put in here. Anyway, that's what a menu file looks like. I'll come back to that in just a minute. Let's move on here to the activity_notes_map. And you can see we just have one element on here, and that is the map view. When we ever create a new Android XML file, most of the boilerplate stuff is already generated for us. You can see we have an Android:ID, and what this attribute is it is the ID for which we can identify this exact view. And you can see @+ID, meaning that we're creating an ID, and this is not one that's ever been used before. Call it map view. And you can see it has a layout width and a height, and both of these values are the size of the parent view that it's in, or in this case it's the screen itself. You can see that I've set this clickable to be true, meaning this map view is allowed to be tapped on and responds to such tap events. What we have here is an Android API key. And what this API key is in another course I'll be showing you how to obtain this API key, and the maps library will not work without a valid API key. Alright, let's move on here. Here's a much more complex view. This is the activity_edit file, and this is the layout that's brought up when one wants to edit a note. Now, if we go to graphical layout here, it might take a minute, but you can see that, again, you don't need to know any kind of XML for this. What the Eclipse plugin allows you to do is you can simply drag and drop the UI elements onto the screen and say if you need to change some things, you would click in this outline here, and then it would show the list of properties and you can change it. You really don't need to know any XML in order to create a view. Alright, let's go back to the XML view here. You can see that we have an edit text. What this request focus does is the first thing what happens when the user were to open this edit text, it's already has the cursor in it and the user can just type away. You can see we have a button here, and that is to change location. And you can see that in this relative layout, when you're creating UI items, you can choose to put them to the left of, to the right of, below, above, any other UI item. You can see, for example, right here in this text, you can see that we're aligning this button below the text, the edit text for the title, which is this UI element here. You can see that this edit text right here is this space right here, a very large spacious area where the user can type in their notes. Now, let's go ahead and let's change some things. You can see we have this gravity field here, and what this gravity field is it states where the insertion point should be. Should it be at the very top of the edit text? Can it be in the middle of the edit text? Should it be at the bottom of the edit text? Let's change this a bit to, we can change this to center. We'll save our file. And we can run this on an emulator. And what you do to start an emulator is you go up to here. You can see I have an emulator for each platform since 2.2. Click on New, and then follow the instructions, and you'll have your own emulator up. And one important thing to note is always be sure to test your application on a real device, not just the emulator. Alright, you can see I already have an emulator open right here. So let's save this, and then if you click on this run right here, you can see you choose I've set this up so that it'll always ask me to choose, and then this console here, it'll just take a minute to upload and install onto here, and it should start the application. You can see here's the log cat, and what this does is it has a list of logs here. Like you can see my application skipped 60 frames.